Hello and welcome back to the lease and review of my 2018 Subaru Outback 3.6R Limited. This is a end of lease 3-year follow-up for the Subaru that we've had, and it's kind of an update to the 2 videos I released last spring, the 5 things I like and dislike about my Subaru Outback, as well as some end of lease 3-year things that I've noticed, some stats, and some responses to some questions and comments I've gotten on the reviews from my previous videos. So welcome back and let's get into it. All right, so some stats for you. Where these stats come from. I've been using an app on Android only for the last 4 or 5 years on all of the cars we've owned since I found the app. It's called My Cars. Again, it's Android only. There is a premium version, but most usability is in the free version, which is great. And so the premium version is a way to help the app creators. The reason I like that app is because you can enter things like bills such as car payments, car insurance, and things like that. You can add vehicle registration fees, you can add insurance fees, every fuel tank fill up, every time you service the car or anything like that. Any expense you have with the car is recorded in the My Cars app. What that comes down to is the ability to track over various lengths of time, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and then by year as well, or a custom date range. So that's where I get my information from. I have a total of 82 refuels over the last 3 years. I have a total of 11 services over the last 3 years. I have a total of 62 bills, including car insurance, car payments, and registration fees over the last 3 years. And so that allows me to have data such as total miles driven. So I stopped recording information in the app a month and a half, 2 months before we turned the car in at the end of the lease. At that time, I had driven 30,585 miles on the Subaru. Over that time, I have an average miles per gallon of 21.85, just under the EPA combined average of 22 miles per gallon. The EPA estimates 20 miles per gallon city and 27 miles per gallon highway. I can tell you, based on my data, the best I've ever gotten in this Subaru Outback 3.6 is 25.14 miles per gallon. The worst tank I ever got was 18.83. Like I said, the best was 25.14. I haven't had a chance to actually take this car on a long road trip. To be honest, if you've seen my other videos, we don't really like the car. My wife is not comfortable in it. It doesn't fit our needs, as has been discussed previously. So we tend to take her car instead of my car on long road trips. We haven't really had a full tank of highway only travel to really see what the actual highway fuel economy is. But either way, 25.14, pretty close to the EPA highway rating. That being said, one of the questions I've gotten in a couple of my videos, Subaru has now introduced the newer model with the 2.4 liter turbo engine replacing the 3.6 naturally aspirated flat 6. How does that compare to the turbo model? I actually think the turbo model on the newer car is probably more like what I would be looking to own if I were to own this car long term. So taking a step back, if my wife and I decided we did like this car and we wanted to buy another one or purchase the lease, at this point what we would do is we would return this lease and probably finance the 2021 model with the 2.4 liter turbo, and that would replace the 3.6. The reason I would go with that one is because I still believe the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder is not enough engine for this car. The 2.4 liter turbo has the same amount of power and roughly the same amount of torque as this flat 6 that's in my car. And while I don't think it's enough power for the car still, the turbo engine is going to have benefits that the flat 6 just doesn't. The turbo model will have the same power as the flat 6 when you need it, but when you don't need it, when you're off boost of the turbo, you will have closer fuel economy to what the 4-cylinder has. So you kind of have the best of both worlds if it's going to be a commuter and a road trip car and things like that. So I actually think the newer model with a 2.4 liter turbo is best way to go and will have adequate power, but unlike the 3.6, it'll get better fuel economy because you won't have to be using the turbo and things like that all the time. All right, so the next stat we're going to talk about is servicing. I do most of the work I can on my own because I have the ability, and I also work in the automotive industry, so I have friends who are technicians who help me out with some of the servicing that I don't have the tools or equipment for. So my service expenses will differ than yours, but for the most part, it's been pretty low cost. So when I leased the vehicle, part of the lease was including the Subaru prepaid maintenance. That included 4 services, and with the 3.6R, Subaru recommends to service the car every 3,000 miles. When you service a Subaru with the 3.6R at Subaru, it actually calls for conventional oil, which I don't recommend. Full synthetic is the way you want to go. It lasts longer. It's just got better qualities to it. You know, conventional oil is lower cost per quart, but you have to do it every 3,000 miles. So you have to decide what's best for you. Would you like to pay less for an oil change but have to do it twice as often as the 4-cylinder with synthetic oil? Or would you like to do it every 6,000 miles like the synthetic oil in the Subaru with the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder? Either way, I did it every 5,000 miles, and I used those 4 services by 20,000 miles. So that prepaid maintenance, I don't remember what I paid for it. It was rolled into the lease. At the end of that lease, I purchased the oil and filter and did it myself or had a friend do it. So that being said, I had 4 services covered. 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, and 20,000 mile services were covered by the prepaid maintenance, 4 oil changes, and 2 pollen filter replacements. At 30,000 miles and 60,000 miles, that's when the larger services come due. When it was time to do the 25 and 30,000 mile services that I paid for on my own, because it was a lease and the 30,000 mile is a preventative maintenance that is right around when I'm turning it in, I just chose to do an oil change so that I knew that the main fluid was changed and that would be an oil change. I just did the minimum possible because, to be honest, I'm turning this in. This is not my car. I'm not going to own it long term. I just have to do the minimum service due. That is my obligation as what they call a lessee. So I paid for 2 oil changes. When you turn in a lease, it has to be above, I believe, 32 of an inch tread depth on the tires. As I've complained about in one of the other videos, the Bridgestone Dueler AS tires, besides not being very good as far as traction is concerned, they're also not cheap. They don't have long life on them. So it was not the option I was going to go with. Again, because I was turning the lease in, all I had to do was meet an obligation of having a minimum tread depth. I got the least expensive tire I could find that would still get me safely through winter. As you can see, I'm driving around on snow-covered roads. I had to replace the tires in November, and I had to return the car in March. So I needed to get through a winter. And it's a good thing too, because the winter of 2020 to 2021, in February of 2021, we got more snow than we have in the last few years. So it's good to have an all-season tire. So I had to go with something that would at least get me safely through winter. So in total, over these last just about 3 years, I've spent a total of $471 on tires and a set of wiper blades and 2 oil changes out of pocket. So it's relatively inexpensive to run. The 30 and 60,000 mile intervals are the bigger ones. So the benefit of leasing is you get out of it shortly before the bigger services. That being said, it's not that major. So at 30 and 60 have things coming up like differential fluids and spark plugs and belts and things like that. Nothing major. Those services should be under $1,000 for the larger ones. As far as reliability, I've only really had one problem, and there have only been 2 recalls in the life of the vehicle. The one problem I had was a squeaky driver's seat frame. At about 11 or 12,000 miles, the seat frame started to squeak like it had several tens of thousands of miles on it. That became quite annoying. They actually ended up having an updated part for that because I was not the only one. There was found to be a plastic bushing in the frame itself between the base and the seat back that causes squeaking, and so I got that replaced under warranty, of course. And then there were 2 recalls. One was a software update due to rear camera issues, and the other one was another software update for the instrument cluster to basically change the time in which the car gave you a low fuel range indicator. So it was telling you there was 30 miles to empty when in fact you were at 0. And so there were some people that the car shut off on them because it was actually empty. So they changed it, and now my fuel light comes on between 50 and 60 miles of range to empty. I just recently checked, and it's currently still the only ones that are out there on the vehicle at this time. So I know with my other videos, a lot of people gave me a lot of hate because, oh, I bought the wrong vehicle. I should have done more research before I bought this vehicle, and you wouldn't be so unhappy with it. And really what it comes down to is I did a lot of research. I'm in the car industry. I've always been into cars. I kind of knew what I was looking for. What I wanted was a sporty wagon, potentially with a manual transmission, that handled well and had lots of room. Unfortunately, I live in the wrong country for that. America does not get those kinds of vehicles. In the wagon category, you could say that Outback is in that category, which I personally don't. I consider it a crossover, but you also have the Buick Regal Tour X, some more expensive vehicles like the Mercedes E-Class wagons and things like that, and also the Jetta Sport Wagon or Golf Sport Wagon, depending on the generation. So there aren't many vehicles available in that class. The Volkswagen products are smaller. We drove them, just weren't happy with them either. Basically, we had very limited choice and we thought, well, we'll give it a try. You know, these are very popular vehicles. It seemed to serve what we needed, but in the end, this wasn't the right vehicle for us. It performed well as a car. It was a great commuter. It was relatively comfortable, relatively quiet, and you know, it got okay fuel economy. So overall, it's a decent car. They sell well for a reason. They meet a lot of people's needs. It just wasn't what we were looking for. Finally, one of the biggest complaints I had about the vehicle was a transmission, and while it is a good transmission for what it is, as far as CVTs go, it is the best one out there. I think with a standard automatic transmission with either 6 or 8 speeds, I think this would be a much better car to drive. I think it would have really transformed the vehicle. So thanks for tuning in again. I hope you enjoyed this final wrap up, answer maybe some questions you had, or kind of take this video as well as the other two that I've made, put them all together and figure out what's best for you. Is this a car that would work for you? Is this what you're looking for? Is it not what you're looking for? Am I an idiot? Yes, this is not the correct car for our family. You know, you never know until you try something. Hope you enjoyed, and leave a comment if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.